Hi guys, welcome to today's Boundary 101. Boundaries are your promise to yourself, the guardian of your inner magic. They nurture genuine connections and celebrate the beauty and individuality. Embrace the freedom, understanding, and the art of loving others and yourself through healthy boundaries. Thank you guys so much for joining me on my healing journey. Before making this video, I listened to a couple books about boundaries. One's called Boundary Boss, and the other one is called The Book of Boundaries. I'll leave a link down below in the description box. Thank you guys for your requests on a boundary video. If you have any more requests or anything to add on the topic of boundaries, please leave them in the comments down below. Your relationship with yourself will set the bar for all other relationships in your life. If you don't know, I escaped a polygamous group, and when I did, my boundaries were like preset to, maybe I had like a lack of boundaries due to the environment I grew up in, which is likely not unique. You all probably, as children, we don't make the decisions, we don't set the freedom that we have. That's done by someone else. Maybe you haven't really took the time to think of what boundaries you want in your life. I know when I left, my boundaries were like way too loose. And then as time went on, they got too rigid. As I became overly protective of myself, for good reason. People will take as much as you give. One thing I really want to make clear is boundaries is not about controlling anyone else. It's not about telling anyone else what to do or how to live. Healthy boundaries have to do with you. I want to make that very clear, as I don't want to control anyone and I don't want to be controlled by anyone else. So if I'm telling you one of my boundaries, it's so that you and I can have a closer relationship. One full of love, respect, and happiness, free of bitterness. And each person's different. Well, one person wouldn't mind like a family member showing up to their house unannounced. Another one might feel very violated by something like that. Brene Brown says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So when communicating your boundaries, make sure that you're doing so in a kind and clear way. So no sugarcoating and no unnecessary rudeness. And remember, it's not too late to set a boundary. Like, for example, my new self-boundary is that I will talk to myself with respect. And sometimes I have to remind myself, hey, that's enough. You're not stupid. How would you like to move forward? Is what I ask myself. Because my inner rebel just wants to be acknowledged and does not like to be told what to do. I will listen to the inner emotions, like an upset child that needs comforting, or like a friend that's overly protective, and just afraid of failing. The majority of boundaries are self-boundaries, as you're solely responsible for upholding the consequences of those set boundaries. See, I told you, self-love, sometimes tough love. The people closest to you are likely comfortable with how things have been so far. And if you all of a sudden introduce a new boundary, they might be hurt by that. They might not respect it right away. It's important to communicate kindly and clearly when setting a new boundary. And if you're having a hard time setting a new boundary, remember, you're worthy. If you're feeling guilty at the thought of setting a healthy boundary, remember, you're way too awesome to dim down your inner light. Tell your guilt/shame, thanks, but you're not needed here. I'm not doing anything wrong. If it helps, imagine it's your best friend trying to set a boundary. I know you'd want to support them and you'd want what's best for them. Be your own best friend in this situation, remembering you're a goddamn unicorn. Your boundary isn't a demand, it's a promise. So uphold your end by upholding those consequences. It might sound redundant, but if someone is violating your boundaries, repeat your boundary. Then if the overstepping continues, you can firmly say your boundary once again, and the consequence of them not respecting that boundary. Always remember, boundaries have to do with you. It's not to control anyone else. It's also not to push people away. In a healthy relationship, communication of one's boundaries is a chance for a much closer relationship. One where you can be vulnerable with the other person and they can be vulnerable with you, and you guys can respect and tell each other how you want to be loved and what your expectations and limits are. Warning of boundary violators, or those people that just are, like, for lack of a better word, narcissistic, and they're just gonna push those barriers and break those boundaries just because they can, using arguments and deflection to try to justify their actions or to tell you that your boundaries are silly. Beware of those the shame feelings that will come in during that time. I hope that you will find someone that will make you feel seen and heard when you're setting a boundary. I know you're going to be nervous about setting new boundaries. So ask yourself, why are you setting this new boundary? Write it down. Ultimately, it's you that's keeping those. And your limits don't need to be explained. People don't need to understand or agree with your boundary. People don't need to understand or agree with your boundary to respect it. Overly explaining is how I've got myself in trouble before. You don't have to explain your reasons or even your consequence for a boundary violator. As a narcissistic person will pick apart your logic and give reasons why your boundaries are stupid. Your boundary might feel like a punishment to another person. Ramani says, here, let me read exactly what it is, because Dr. Ramani, this is a quote from her. Your job on this earth is not to rescue another capable adult. That responsibility falls on them. And people can mean well, but still do harm. Remember, it's not your job to comfort someone that feels bad about your boundary. Although you can do that if you want. But it's not for me to comfort someone that doesn't want me in their life. Nope, you wanted me out. So I'm out. Bye, Felicia. That one was hard for me, honestly. Because I didn't always get closure or why people stopped talking to me, other than I left the group, and leaving the culture made so that I guess that's the closure you get, huh? But I found myself comforting the people that would call me just to tell me that they had a dream that I was going to hell because of my lifestyle, and they were just calling me to let me know. And I was comforting them because they're crying on the phone telling me this. And I'm saying, I realize that you're reaching out because you love me, and I love you too. Just understand that I don't believe the same things as you. But I do love you. In making deals with family, make sure that you're upfront about your expectations. Oftentimes, family members just want to help. However, that doesn't mean that they can just insert themselves into your life however they see fit. Get clear with yourself. What boundaries do you want to have? Practice saying them out loud, like to build that confidence. It's not my job to assume your boundary or to know what it is. It's your job to communicate your boundary kindly and clearly. The point of boundaries is to be the best version of yourself. And it's okay if you want to adjust your boundary as long as it's your decision to do so. Also, try respecting other people's boundaries even when you don't understand them. Like food, that's the hard one for me because I love all food, and I could easily talk about someone's food, like point something out that they're eating that I might not agree with. So yeah, food is a boundary that's hard for me to I have to remind myself to respect that boundary. And because the boundary has more to do with you than anyone else, I don't want you to set boundaries that you can't keep. The majority of boundaries are self-boundaries. Remember, once again, it's not too late to set a boundary. And if you want more information, I've left the resources and a couple books down in the description of this video. Let's promote self-love and creativity, guys. See you next time.
Light. Good boy.